in our conversation leading up to this, and many of the conversations today, I'm going to use the word social impact came up, and I think it resonates with everyone here. And we'll start off to talk about the commonality among us as humans, but particularly how we see social impact in our lives at this moment, the pressing project or what it means to us right now, and then dig into some of where that all came from. I am the moderator, so I will not say as much. Also, my husband, Judi, spoke before. That very pregnant woman in flowers was me in the photo. I've been working in the greater impact investing, social innovation space for over 15 years. And again, since Judi spoke to most of it, the main thing is we met in Kenya. It was at a point where I thought I was at the peak of what I was doing in the impact space, and then a shock hit. And I will tell you more, but first I want to move over to, and it's Majora.
Yes,
Majora.
Yes, it is.
You unfortunately didn't get to do our little brainstorm beforehand, so I think we need to start with you.
Okay.
What is social impact to you right now? And if you can share an example of what that really has looked like as the culmination of your work to date. We're going to go back, trace it to where it came from later, but let's start with what do you think about now?
Well, since the culmination is still a process, so I'm hardly calling it the culmination. However, what it will be, so I'm Majora Carter, I'm an urban revitalization strategist, born and raised South Bronx, New York City, still there. Okay, there you go. And the idea of social impact is exactly why I'm here. This is a creativity conference, thinking about, as a developer, who gets an opportunity to be creative, especially in the communities that I serve personally and professionally in my own way. So social impact to me is about having, and I also am an author. I wrote a book called Reclaiming Your Community. You don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one. And it's a national bestseller, but you can buy it anywhere and just like keep it going up. And but the whole point of that book was really to define to share the story that I've told about going through the process of sharing what it was like to be from a community that everyone had written off and that other folks were defining how it was developed, and then stepping up and realizing that we could create new opportunities to transform our own communities socially, economically, environmentally, spiritually, in ways that supported us. But again, as a Black woman from a community like that, there wasn't a whole lot of support, and there still is not, saying, oh, you deserve the right to do that. But I take my creative license to make it happen, and that's what this is about. So that is what social impact looks like to me, being able to step up and do your thing.
Amazing, thank you.
Hi.
Judi.
Hi, I'm Judi Beecher. So I'm an actress, I'm a filmmaker, writer, director, producer, singer-songwriter, and an author. And so I'm all about creativity. So right now, the projects that I'm working on right now, which is social impact, which is universal story, which is all this stuff. I'm in post-production on a project I've been working on for 9 years, a documentary called Run Runya, The Kindness of Strangers, and about my mom, who was one of 2 children to escape from Nazi-occupied France to Switzerland by herself at 6.5 years old. And I'm also working on a couple of other a film which is very much about social impact is Forbidden Tango, which came out during COVID, and which is about bringing cultures and religions together and helping each other regardless of who you are, what you are, what religion you are. And I'm also working on a short film like that. Every single thing I'm doing right now is trying to change the conversation, is trying to change the consciousness of other people and of the planet. And I didn't start that way. I didn't come from that. That'll be the next question, but because it's not a lifelong journey, it's something that came to me that I had to do. And so, yes, so I guess right now I did, and I won an award in Cannes for the teaser for my documentary last summer, before it was finished, the Grand Prix de Cinema for the 3-minute teaser. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I'm also acting in a movie as well. I'm just doing all my things. So.
Great.
Hi
Simone.
there, Simone Puro. So, this question, I am a social impact advisor for creatives. So my career and livelihood has been in this topic of social impact. So for me, I came from working at the White House, in Congress, and then in corporate, and then now in independent film, and in working with artists. I'm very connected now to understanding social impact as relational. And what I mean by that, it kind of goes deeper. And for me, what's happening in our society and the world, I'm seeing extraordinary examples of how artists are the first responders of social change. And if we don't have art in combination with data and policy and science and all of the things, right? If we don't have art and creativity in that, then we're not getting to kind of the soul and the heart to actually make the change and the impact. So that's, for me these days, all of my films and work that I'm doing with artists is very much about making us aware of being a first responder in today's times.
Do you want to just give a quick, specific example?
Sure. I have a film out now called Lily with Patricia Clarkson. It's on Netflix, and it's about the story of Lily Ledbetter, the fair pay icon. And this, again, it's the story of policy and equal pay, but it was really about the story of how one individual in our country went through all levels of the government when she saw a wrong and injustice in her life. So she went through the courts, she got to the Supreme Court, didn't win there, then she went to Congress, and a piece of legislation was recognized, and President Obama signed his first piece of legislation, the Lily Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. So this was like a quintessential example of how a project, a film, a story, in an entertaining way, was allowed us to understand and get at the issue of pay equity, gender equity, and now we are, we just got an award with a major law organization. So we're getting this film in all of these different areas of our conversation.
It's a great movie. Judi and I have seen it. We highly recommend it. Yeah. And funny enough, I was sharing with you, we actually saw it before it released because we talked to parties. It's a small scene.
Yes. Great.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'll share too. So I previously, I still do, was a capital raise advisor. I built a company that was focused on this from a global perspective. We worked around 45 countries. And after my company was in the attack that Judi alluded to in his speech, it led me to focus more on coaching individuals and teams to make sure that they're brought on the journey of also knowing how to be their own strategy consultants, their own capital raise advisors, but of course, usually also needing support. But thank you. These are all incredible stories. I'm going to pull back now, and then we'll get back to the points you just shared, the current points. I'm going to ask each of you, is there an early memory? feel free to share your earliest memory that you as a child, something then or later in your life, that was the first seed. You didn't even really know it was going to lead you to where you are today, but now that you look on it, it's something that really put you on that path.
All right. So I can start since you handed the mic to me. I was 7. It was the end of the summer. Probably at the beginning of the summer, I watched 2 of the buildings at either end of my block burn down as a result of the financial disinvestment and the arson that was happening all over the country. But the South Bronx was literally the poster child for urban blight. I mean, there were years of redlining, financial discrimination that basically made it so that, generally, communities that people like my dad, who was literally escaped domestic terrorism in Georgia. He was the son of enslaved folks. Moved to up north, escaping that domestic terrorism, and found a home, and was actually able to buy a home in the house that I grew up in, back in the '60s, but the financial disinvestment that literally had land because you couldn't get loans, in this community, and thanks to our federal government, and banks who basically colluded together. And this was by law, right? And so there I was, 7 years old. I get to, all of the buildings had fallen into disrepair. Landlords were torching them to collect insurance money, and both of them at the beginning of the summer burned down, right? The end of the summer, my brother was killed as a part of the drug war. And so there I was, 7 years old, going into the 3rd grade, and thinking, I just have to get myself out of this community. And I was going to use education to do exactly that. And I did. And got myself into one of the best high schools in the country, Bronx High School of Science, Wesleyan University, NYU, and then came back home only because I needed a cheap place to stay when I went to NYU. That's it. That was mommy and daddy's house. But fast forward, when I understood really clearly that the same kind of historic, systemic bias and historic discrimination that created the South Bronx of my youth was still at it. And that's when I realized that I could either pretend I don't see it or actually work to create, through various real estate development projects, the kind of things that could create the kind of housing, the kind of business development that really made people feel as though they didn't have to move out of their neighborhoods to live in better ones. And so that moment of being a kid and going, I didn't have the words or even the understanding that these were actually rules, regulations, policies, outright racism, all of it that just did that. And I got a chance to see that it's still doing it, but we can use an opportunity to try to create the kind of future that we want to be a part of. And I knew that that's when I was going to step up and do it myself, despite the fact that all the forces in the world are against, again, a black woman of color from a poor community like I'm from, and still deciding to say, I'm not going to stop.
I'm going to merge the next question too, and then have each of you do the same. So that started at 7, and then you did share fast forward. If you think beyond that, was there a specific, so we often think of pivot points in our life being often after the worst thing you could imagine, which you just shared some pretty horrible things, but that then really turned, right? It hit that point where it sounds like maybe those early days, but also this moment where you said, I am building. That maybe wasn't the easiest thing to do once you started building. Which would you call it? Can you give an example of a pivot point career-wise, perhaps later on?
Yeah.
That was wow, this is the low, and then this is what turned it.
Yeah, so sure.
And just quickly, because
totally fun. Mm-hmm. The reason why my father bought the house in Hunts Point, which is the neighborhood I was born and raised in, is because he was a Pullman porter, and there was a rail station that he was able to see from the tracks. And so he bought a house near that station. So that's where I grew up. I was able to buy that station years later. And so we used that as a way to, we developed an event venue there. So tonight, it's called Bronxlandia. There's a great Afro beats and reggae concert going on there tonight. pro wrestling tomorrow and a pride event on Saturday. But anyway, all that to say. But we're also using that relationship that we developed with Amtrak, who owns a lot of the land there, to work to build a much larger assemblage, which we're in pre-development on. So yeah, I want to talk to you about social impact funds that would literally create 1,000 units of new housing, including at least a few 100,000 square feet for the kind of economically diverse projects, whether it's home ownership and rentals, but also things in life sciences, technology, green economy, and cultural as well. So that's what we're working on right now.
That's amazing.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
agree.
Judy, do you want to go next? What was your earliest seed of maybe even if you want
Yeah.
to share your current project or
Yeah.
and then pivot point?
Yeah. So my earliest seed, what I was talking about earlier, it's something that came later of a life-changing kind of thing. So I was working as an actor in Los Angeles, and I was struggling to get work like most actors do, but I was doing okay, but it wasn't okay, and I was mad at the whole world, and I was mad at the industry, and I was mad at my friends for not having me in, and all the producers and the casting. I was mad at everybody because I felt like nobody was helping me to get to the next level. And I went to this spiritual kind of money group to get more money, and the only advice that they gave me was to pray, meditate, and write. And that told me that I had no concept of God. That's what they said. I was like, fuck you, excuse my French. I have a concept, it's my own concept. And I was really mad that they gave me that kind of advice. And I was really depressed. I was feeling really down. And so I did. I got down on my hands and knees, and I cried my eyes out. And they said you had to be willing to give up whatever you know about yourself, and be willing to ask for God's will for your life and what that's supposed to be. And if you're not supposed to be an actress, you're not supposed to be an actress, or and just let it happen. I was really pissed, and I did it, and I'm like, all right, God. I was bawling. I thought I was supposed to be an actress. Maybe I'm not. I don't know what I'm supposed to be anymore. And I was in a dark room, and all of a sudden, and I had never been able to meditate. I knew how to pray, and I was on my knees, and all of a sudden I felt a light on me, and the light went through the entire room. It was filled with light, and I felt my body sink into the ground, and I saw my life in front of me like on a screen, and it was so clear, and I saw exactly what I was supposed to be doing with my life. As an actress and as an activist, and I didn't know what that meant at that point. I had to look up, what does an activist do? What am I supposed to be doing? And it was that all of my things, and I was supposed to be an actress, but that I was also supposed to be all these other things, a filmmaker, a singer, and everything that I did, I asked for my hands to be used to do God's work, and that all of my projects needed to do something that was going to change the consciousness of the world. And in my acceptance speech for the Oscar that I saw in my visualization, I said to everybody out there, I said, this is a powerful industry, and we have the power to change things, and that's what we need to do. And then after that, all these things started to come to me, all these projects, and I started channeling. I wrote 5 books of channeled information that came through me, that I wrote a book called Pray, Meditate, Write, The Teachings of Zolas. And, and my film, Forbidden Tango, was Pope Francis recognized that as, it was the first film he recognized to bring people together. And we won Best Film for Peace and Tolerance at Cannes for that film.
Amazing.
And, so that, I guess, is that answer.
Yeah,
and then,
amazing.
yes,
Yeah.
and then, my film as well, the universal story part of it, which is, is finding that thing, that moment, that the string that's going to make it very specific and personal, that's going to make it a universal story, that's going to bring people in to it, to make them connect to themselves, to what you're saying, to your story. So So
Amazing.
yeah, so that's all of my stuff is now that. so.
Incredible. Incredible journey, yeah. Simone, this
Ah,
first early
okay,
seed. and
early
pivot point.
seed and pivotal. Well, I love this question. It's giving me a lot to think about. So I'm also from the Bronx, and so one of my earliest memories is, so I come from a single parent. Mother, having me without being married and not having health insurance because she wasn't married. She got fired from her job because she was pregnant. Like all of the kind of things that some of us now can't believe was in, and it wasn't that long ago. I think that started a spark in me to have this activism nature in me. Fast forward, she was able on a secretary's salary to buy a 2-family home, and she became the landlord. I became the landlord's daughter, and we literally had United Nations tenants. And so I started developing this fierce understanding or appreciation for story. So, and my mother would have everyone in the house all of the time, and so stories became a big part of my life. And then fast forward, I go to DC and start working in politics, and that's all about story. So that, I think, is really the through line into my present day work with artists and filmmakers. But in this pivotal moment, I also had my home burned down and lost everything in a fire. And the year before the pandemic. And the pandemic hit all on my birthday. But during and while, but yes, and like I'm so happy about it now because something came from all of that. I met my husband and we moved to the woods, like in an artist co-op right outside the city. And I'm a city girl, and I'm now dealing with bugs and nature in a different way than bugs and nature in the Bronx. And so, but in that, I realized that this whole notion of how I was going to pivot my work behind the scenes as a producer and now come in front of the camera, in that I am now advising and training multiple and many artists now, and I'm really being able to help them strategize of how to work in this environment of building audience and marketing and distribution and financing, but doing it in a much larger scale. So it was like that. I needed to kind of go into the woods and nature to understand what my gifts were, in addition to what my background was. So that's kind of my circle to where I am today. And I'm at the Creativity Conference, which is absolutely perfect for the work that I do and I love.
These are all such incredible stories. And I mean, similar to your story, of course, I mean, my path was a little bit different because I was an environmentalist that decided to work in finance to understand finance. Good. But similar to meeting Judi, again, it was the lowest point where my company for 10 years was hit by this terrorist attack. My business partner, Jason, who was in Judi's presentation, was killed. And that's in those moments, right? I think this is the commonality we're seeing. We obviously influenced by parents and upbringing early on, some early shocks that lead to the early seeds of opportunity. When we push and suddenly can't anymore because a shock hits, that opens up what, in coaching language, sometimes we talk about this upper limit, and all these things start going wrong because you're just at the edge of that. I believe we're at time for Q&A. I'm gonna, if we can be very fast, if I'd put in a question to everyone. Is there, back to the social impact piece, is there a call to action or like a one-liner that you want people to wrap this day up thinking about, also related to, I think social impact is a nice human element for us to think about. Don't forget we're going to have Q&A after this, so brief. Anyone who's ready, go.
Oh, sure.
You get to go first.
One thing that I would love to impart on this audience in particular is when you're thinking about your work, think of it holistically. Again, going back to nature, we have the tree in the forest, we have rivers in a stream of huge bodies of water, right? So placing our work in a larger context, and I talk a lot about creative impact, commercial impact, and social impact. And so when you are pitching your work, when you're talking out there in the world, this trifecta of impact is what I have found kind of the most successful way to really build community and audience around what you do. And we need your impact in all of those areas.
Don't let fear hold you back from doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? Just do it, like Nike says. Just do it, right? Fear is false evidence appearing real. And if we all like sat there and like, just like, we're too afraid to make that video, make that call, to take the next step, then like that's how things happen. So just do it.
Nike, please sponsor
Nike.
Judy's movie. Okay, next. Quick, yeah.
I'm definitely going to go back to the idea that we need to be aware of who gets to be creative, and being very encouraging that, and understanding that not everybody gets to, it's almost a privilege, okay, in terms of who gets supported. And I think we all have to be aware of that so that we can actually let more folks be able to do that, because we know things like, everybody knows about the diversity thing, it's like boards that are more diverse, companies do better, blah, blah, blah. We don't necessarily do that in terms of the creative work of building our communities in general and our world. And we just need to be real clear about that as we think about it, that more people need to be at the table actually building stuff.
And I'll just end on, shock is your greatest opportunity to have impact. Don't forget to do that.
Wait, shock? Wait, what?
Shock in your life is what
shock
leads
in
you
your
to
life.
the
Okay.
opportunity to turn it into impact.
Any questions? Good.
Ladies, thank you all. Your journeys are very inspiring. And I always say that, my name is Aziza Kabibi, first of all, nice to meet you all. I always say that change is not made in comfort zones. And based on your stories, I have learned that your seeds were surrounded by challenges. So now that you have achieved a certain level of success, what do you do to fight against the urge, I guess, to push against the discomfort that is required for change?
Well, you just got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is the thing. But also ensuring that you're finding joy in all sorts of things. Like, as crazy as what I do is, it's amazing to see things blossom in ways that no one expects them to, especially coming out, of communities like mine. I mean, and it is extraordinary, like what we've been able to accomplish. So we celebrate all sorts of victories, big and small.
Thank you.